we shouldn't be chasing virality anyways. Like truthfully, every video that I've had that's gone kind of like, I don't know, let's say north of 400,000 views, it's like a nightmare. Because once you have videos that are going that high, it's like, people are telling you you're an old gray bitch.
Folks are tired. They're exhausted. Social media users are literally exhausted. We see these words come out, people's brains are shot, attention spans are shot. You've said that as well. But exhausted people still scroll. I mean, they're still doom scrolling. They're still going through content. What does that tell you about what these platforms have actually built?
It's like not we're opening up our app thinking, oh, what makes me happy? Facebook. It's like we go to these apps because
founder-led content is having a moment, as I'm sure you've noticed. Every startup is being told their CEO needs to post now. They're writing ghostwriters to go ahead and actually give CEOs some personality that actually don't have any bandwidth other than a teaspoon worth of personality.
I think everyone's pretty tired of, AI-generated content at this point. From founders, like nothing worse than a founder trying to, impart their wisdom that came from ChatGPT.
Hey everyone, this is Said with Messy Growth. Today's guest is Carmen Vicente. Now, if I told you that today's guest started her career brewing beer, you'd probably assume this conversation was heading in a very different direction. Because most people don't go from working in a brewery to becoming one of the most recognizable voices in B2B social media. But Carmen's career has never really followed the ultimate script. Over the last decade, she's moved from brewing beer to communications to marketing leadership to building brands and communities that people genuinely care about. Along the way, though, she's become a LinkedIn top voice, built an audience of tens of thousands of folks online, and developed a reputation for saying the things most marketers are thinking but are usually too afraid to post. What I appreciate about Carmen, though, is that while the internet seems obsessed with algorithms, hacks, growth tricks, and engagement formulas, she's built her career around something much more simpler and much harder to fake: understanding people. Because at the end of the day, nobody wakes up wanting more content, they want connection. And whether she's helping a brewery, a tech company, or building her own audience, that's the thread that runs through pretty much everything she's done. So today we're going to talk about social media, personal brands, building trust online, the pressure of constantly creating content, and why so many companies still sound like they're being run by a committee of robots. Carmen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. I want to take right into the good stuff. As in my intro, I mentioned you started as a brewer. Unconventional, but I love that story. Then you went into communications, then marketing, then B2B tech social strategy. And somewhere in between, you taught weaving and rug making. Now, most people have a career, path that, is very simple. You seem to have some sort of a collage. What's the actual thread running through all of this?
Yeah. I think that a lot of people have sort of eclectic work histories. I think the non-linear career is gaining some traction, but I think, I went to school for creative writing and I wanted to find work where I got to work. I wanted to work in narratives, I wanted to still be able to write. And so I think in communications and marketing and social, there is this common thread of writing, and it might not seem that way, but I feel like part of the reason I started making videos was that I figured the only way to get my writing out there in the, with some awareness would be if I put it into a script. So I think for me, that's kind of the common thread between it all. Perhaps the weaving doesn't have the narrative things, like weaving a yarn, telling a story, there's like something symbolic there. So yeah, I think it's just that I like crafting a good, compelling story.
Is weaving something you still do it right now in your spare time, or is it more of a thing that was the past?
Yeah, so I've always been a big knitter. My grandma taught me to knit when I was little, and I always like any kind of craft that has like thread or yarn or whatever. Weaving, I will say, takes a little bit more setup. So with 2 kids and a tech job, I do less weaving days, but I still do knit like year round. I always have like a knitting project on the go. So yeah.
Interesting enough, a lot of her parents, grandmas, grandpas, grandmas mostly, the grandparents, they love to do these sort of activities, knitting, weaving, so on and so forth. So it's sort of like a lost art for the most part. Now, if you tie that a little bit with today, you said you like to do it. You don't might not have a lot of time, but you try to do it whenever you get the opportunity. This is a skill that requires a lot of patience and attention. Like you got to sit down and actually do it. You have to enjoy the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things in life that you have to enjoy the process to be able to do it, but this requires a lot of your focus, energy. You have to stay still, for a lack of a better way. Considering we tie that to the profession that you are in, social media, communication, it is something that gets vilified quite a lot because we say that it takes attention away from people in the sense that your attention spans are a lot shorter because of those short videos, short form content, so on
Yeah.
and so forth. These two things seem ideologically as separate as corn and moon. Like, how does that fit in?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I've never like maybe thought of an argument for why I do both, but I also feel like if you work in social, it's almost like you need even more uh it's like you have even more imperative to find something that helps
Mm,
to draw your attention, you know?
mm.
So I read a ton still, even though I'm like I would say my screen time, I never check it. I don't want to know. It's like terrible.
Already? You don't have
Yeah.
those thing on?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. What's it going to tell me? That I'm a terrible person? I already know. Like I already know that I'm like online all of the time. So uh yeah, but I feel like I do certain behaviors almost like to compensate for my extremely online behavior. So I read a ton, um, and I do these like activities that, like you say, require quite a lot of undivided attention. And I don't know. I think that that's like a kind of a goal of mine. Like I like doing things that require my undivided attention, and
Mm,
not just
mm.
scrolling. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting you describe crossing from B2C beer into B2B tech as entering a whole other universe. Is there something that hit you quite a lot about LinkedIn, for instance, when you first arrived, and why did you stay?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've been kind of lucky in every social media platform that I've joined where I've been met with like pretty early um engagement or something like that. Not to say like my growth on social has done not been like meteoric or anything like that. Like there's I wouldn't say that I'm like breaking any records or anything. It's been pretty like slow and steady, but um, I think that getting some like early wins does help to keep the momentum going. It kind of makes you feel like it's worth it. And when I joined LinkedIn, I had been working in Instagram and TikTok for so long because in the B2C world, that's like your bread and butter. And I was surprised at how engaged everyone was. Like I would make a post and I'd get like tons of comments and like people cheering you on. And I was like, holy crap, like this is not how people act in other parts of social media. Like in
True.
on Instagram or something, like it's very hard to get people to engage with you. So I think early on, LinkedIn felt very like open or like very amenable to the type of content I was making. But then I would say I felt a similar thing happened when I joined TikTok. Like last year, I started posting on TikTok to make myself some kind of a guinea pig. And one of my earliest videos went like mega viral. And I was like, ooh, that's a nice drug. Like it, like, you get that like dopamine rush. So I think truthfully, if I had had like a long string of like poorly performing videos, I probably just would have quit in
Mm,
both regards. So I don't think that's a very good message of perseverance, but I
mm.
think like early engagement or like early like waves of a little bit of not virality, but just like a bit of action on the platform does help to make you be like, okay, yeah, I could do that again, you know?
Mm, mm. You know, it's something interesting you said because a lot of the content creators out there, they will tell you that the goal is consistency. I mean, chances are your videos are not going to go viral. I mean, like you said, you have been really lucky. I'm
Yeah.
sure there are content creators, hundreds of them, thousands of that are not so lucky, so to speak. But I also happened to read a comment today on LinkedIn where this person was saying, "Hey, there's a random person who was creating videos for like 3 years, and they would
Mhm.
get like 10 or 20 views, but
Yeah.
that one video went viral, and he's not getting an obscene amount of attention at the same time, right? Like it's just crazy how it all works at the same time."
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't know. I think that it's like, we shouldn't be chasing virality anyways. Like truthfully every video that I've had that's gone kind of like I don't know, let's say north of 400,000 views is like a nightmare because once you have videos that are going that high, it's like, people are telling you you're an old gray bitch and whatever. It's like there's like too much like you get fed to the dogs, I think, once you go viral. So
Mm.
I think there's enough like awareness now that that's like a pretty bad fate. But I don't know. Yeah, consistency is an interesting piece of advice because I get where it comes from and I don't think it's bad advice, but I've also built all of my followings by being pretty inconsistent. I don't know. Like I work a full-time, very um very intense job. And, I post on TikTok and Instagram like twice a month. And
You are an enigma. We'll have to figure that out by the end of this episode, how you do it. Interestingly enough, there is an aspect of content creation being consistent, virality. People chase that whether we like it or not. That is essentially the it goal for a lot of the folks out there. But at the same time, we talk about algorithms more thoughtfully than pretty much anyone that I've come across in this capacity. When did you go from using social media to genuinely studying it? Was there a moment it became something you needed to understand rather than just navigate through it?
I mean, I think there are a few factors that kind of like coincided at the same time. Like I started working in tech, and I think then, that world was less of a mystery to me. Like when you start working with product teams and engineering teams and product marketing teams, you're like, oh, like, if Instagram wanted to make a product feature, they would. It's like they have the labor or like, the sort of bandwidth to do that.
Sure.
It was interesting to start thinking about like, oh, like Instagram is just an app, and an app is full of product features, and you can make whatever features you want to serve the user if like, if you wanted to, you would, kind of thing. Um and then I guess I also started making content around that time as well. So it was like I started to think a little more critically about the algorithms, and really it just I guess the reason I got analytical was because I'd been working in social for so long, and I think if you are only like a passive user of social media, or you are working in social, which means you're kind of like always feeding the algorithms, you're the one who's getting taken advantage of. Like you're the one who like is kind of getting the short end of the stick. And I think to like change or like sort of transform my approach into a more analytical one, it just made me feel like less of a sucker. Like I was like, okay, I have a bit more agency now if I
Mm.
can study these systems as opposed to just like, eating whatever they serve me, kind of thing. So it felt like a way to, I don't know, like resist it a little bit. But also I just think I'm like curious about these things. Like I feel that whenever, Instagram comes out with a product feature or Adam Mosseri makes a post, I'm always like, what does this really mean? And I feel like if we take everything at face value, we're not getting the full picture. And so I'm like determined to take nothing at face value. I want to dig always. And I don't know. Adam Mosseri posted a picture of like a hike he was on the other day, and I was like, what does it mean? It's probably something.
I'm starting to understand the success of you on social media. You've cracked the code. You've looked inside the matrix, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, to get deep inside the matrix for sure.
You coined this idea of dialogical or diabolical algorithms,
Oh, yeah.
platforms moving toward conversation rather than broadcast. M- Most folks, they're still playing the old game. What does the new game look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I was working at a different company at the time that I made this prediction about dialogical algorithms, and everything was about like these AI agents while you shopped. Like you speak to an AI agent while you online shopping, and I was like, oh, this is what's going to happen to social media. And then I just sort of like was paying attention to all of the partnerships that OpenAI was doing. And I was like, okay, I bet you anything that like within 6 months, we're going to just be talking to our algorithms, like being like, hey, like, it might say to us, oh, I noticed you've been watching less like get ready with me videos. Like, do you, and it would kind of strike up a conversation. And I was like, we're so close to this. I can feel it. Then after I made that video, I'm not saying I'm not like pretending I caused something, but I just think the writing was on the wall. Like Instagram released your algorithm, which is where you toggle preferences on and off about what you want to see more or less of. Threads
Mm.
launches Dear Algo, a feature where you talk to your algorithm. YouTube now has Ask YouTube, and it's like they all have it. All of the apps have some sort of LLM layer where you chat with them. And I think, like, in terms of what is the new game, I think what it rewards is like content where you go deep and specific, as opposed to like, because what it means is that somebody's going to talk with their algorithm and say, hey, I want to watch a video about somebody reviewing these like earbuds or something like that. And if you have a video that's all about that, it's almost like you have to think of social content like an SEO wizard or something like that. So I feel like, yeah, the new game is that every algorithm uses an LLM or has an LLM embedded in its recommendation system now. So um, there's like pros and cons. I think it means that new accounts that don't have much of a history of followers or engagement could see like breakaway successes. You'll see new accounts getting big reach because your reach isn't so dependent on, prior engagements. Whereas I
Mm.
guess some of the cons are that if you've built up a big audience, now that doesn't count for as much when you make a video and push it into the algorithm. But yeah, I think if I had to be like crafting a strategy for a brand, I would say like it's good to make content at least some of the time where you go hyper specific and you really niche in
Yeah.
on, you know, whatever it is that you do.
It's interesting you mentioned deep and research content, long form content, I'm assuming, for that matter. Whereas I kind of felt like where social media is headed, even LinkedIn, you have a lot of these different short style videos coming through, quick dopamine hits, quick messages, get to the point real quick. We used to have the 20 minutes cooking videos. Now they're distilled down to a minute. Like just let's get through it. Let me get me to the point. Let's push out as much as we can. These two things and ideology, I guess different forms of content kind of like clash
Hmm.
with one another. So if you're saying, and of course you can't predict anything from your lens, that's what gets rewarded, the deep research content. But I would have folks that create content will say, well, hey, people love to consume shorts. Shouldn't that is where we should be putting all of our energies and focus on?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I think like there's always this debate about like should we focus on short form, should we focus on long form? Is long
Sure.
form short form, And so we're always trying to say I feel like there's always some report that says, people want long form now. And it's like here's the thing. We love a short little hit of dopamine and we also like watching movies. We always have. So I don't really think that I don't know, we probably see long and short form kind of go through volatile cycles, but I did an event the other day with um, Sam Clannon. He's like head of the Create product at LinkedIn, and he was saying that you kind of have like three buckets of people you're trying to reach on LinkedIn. Like one is your network, one is your network's network, and then the third is everyone else. And the thing is what each of these audiences likes is totally different. Like your network will like personal information. Your network's network doesn't care about your story, of some barbecue you went to or something like that where you
Sure.
had an epiphany. So I feel like the message now from the apps is you better have like a content plan. And that content plan cannot be one type of content. It's like you basically have to have kind of like your top of funnel content and then your mid funnel content and your bottom funnel content. And I think that they want us all to be um like they want us to be sophisticated content engines that are thinking about many stages of awareness. People like users that come across you and don't know who you are, and then users who do know you and like want to stick around. So yeah, I think that short and long form falls into that, where it's like I could understand if you had a really engaged following that then sometimes you release long form content that they love because they get a little more of you. Whereas like that long form content probably doesn't appeal to the person who's just stumbled upon you and found you.
It is such an interesting point that you make about your network don't probably care. It kind of like leads me to this separate question on social media. Folks are tired. They're exhausted. Social media users are literally exhausted. We see these reports come out. People's brains are shot. Attention spans are shot. You've said that as well. But exhausted people still scroll. I mean, there's still doom scrolling. They're still going through content. What does that tell you about what these platforms have actually built?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't think we go to social media to be like nourished, you know? I don't think we're going to social media because
Really?
it's like not we're opening up our app thinking, "Oh, you know what makes me happy? Facebook." It's like we go to these apps because like it's habitual. They give us a little hit of something we like, which is like some brain, I don't know, some hormone in your brain that feels good. It wears off very quickly, so we come back to it. Like there's obviously this addiction piece. Um, so yeah, it's like why do we do things that are bad for us? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we do that, but I also think like there's so many people I follow on social where I'm like, they're amazing. They like the content they make is like incredible and mind blowing. So I think that the truth is we as a species are willing to suffer quite a bit to even a little bit of payoff. So we're okay with scrolling for like 3 hours and only liking 5% of what we consumed or something like that. So I don't know. I don't have like a very uplifting answer for you, but I think that we can know all of the risks and still enter into an agreement being like, yeah, this isn't so good for me, but I do it because I like it or because it it gives me some like hit of dopamine or something like that.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Wall-E?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I'm
oh, we saw that movie with our kids, and sometimes it's kind of like reminds me a little bit of that because it's interesting. You made this point earlier on the very beginning, which is I'll do other things consciously that are away from the screen. That's because I mean this is your day job.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
similar with me. I don't use social media, but I am in front of screens because I have a job naturally that requires me to be in front of a computer 8 hours a day at least.
Yeah.
So I try to deal my horses, my land as much as possible. Isn't that kind of like a doom circle of in and of itself? Like you're eating junk food, but now you got to exercise for 4 hours in order to be able to wear the effects off of the junk food. Uh, uh,
Yeah. I mean, it's like I've seen some like kind of fringe movements of people who are trying to leave social media entirely.
sure,
And it's interesting. Like I applaud them. I think it's like a kind of a neat,
sure, if that works for you.
yeah, but it's also like, I also saw a video the other day where this person was saying like, oh, and wherever she lives in Ohio, like you cannot park without paying with an app. So it's like you need to have your phone, you need to have the app, you need to have some sort of like, payment system that is not
Yeah.
capped. Um, so it's like, I don't know. I think there's also like if you try to denounce these systems and say like, hey, I'm walking away, you're also walking away from like a lot of like sort of support systems and networks and all these things that make them sticky. Like I think there's some sort of stat about like the reason people don't leave Facebook is because they don't want to leave the communities that they're in or something. So yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying where it's like these systems that we're kind of addicted to then like necessitate compensatory or compensation sort of in behavior.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I feel like maybe a psychologist has to tell you how to get out of that loop.
It reminds me of this guy. I read this post on Reddit, and he was mentioning like I have 13 or 14 different subscriptions, so I would like to build an app to manage all of those subscriptions. I don't think you understand the irony
Yeah,
of what you're trying to say here. So that app will also have a subscription. So you need a subscription to manage all of your subscriptions.
totally. I mean, I feel like I'd sign up today. I'd be like, yeah, thank you, I'll take that.
Yeah.
But
Me too. Me
yeah.
too. Absolutely. It's a fun little time we're living in. Talking about virality and everything, you had a single video actually generate about 710,000 views across various different platforms for
Mhm.
a brand campaign. And you said the key was they gave you the keys literally and let you cook.
Mhm.
What do most brands get catastrophically wrong when they work with different creators?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the classic answer here is that they're like too heavy-handed in how you um, execute the campaign.
Really?
Uh, and I don't know. I mean, like I do work on both sides of this equation. So we at my company work with influencers, and then I also act as I mean, I don't know if that word fits, but like a content creator in partnerships. And it's tricky because as the brand, you definitely want more of a bottom funnel message. You want people to talk about the product. You want people to like make more of a sales pitch. And as the creator, you want it the opposite. You know, you want them to be like, you can do a video about anything. You don't have to mention the product.
Sure.
And you're kind of like, it's this dance where you're like, the less I mention this product, the better this video is going to do. Um, in the case of this like one partnership that did so well, it was interesting. It wasn't a product that I was
Mm,
promoting. It was their newsletter. I mean, and I guess you could say a newsletter is a product, but it was like
sure.
it was real value, I think, to the people signing up. So it wasn't just like, hey, this is a supplement or like some kind of thing you need to buy and put in your cart. It was different. So that I think that's part of why it did well. But also like they just weren't very hard-headed about like they weren't policing
Yeah.
the way they made the content. Like I wrote a script.
Be the freedom.
Yeah, I sent it over. They were like, looks great. Like they really let me shape what that piece of content was. And I think, I can definitely speak from experience of all the brand deals I've done. The ones where I have the least micromanaging are the ones that also perform the best. So um, I don't know. I think that you probably just have to have like a certain level of faith or even like comfort in letting people do their thing. But I
Yeah.
think that like if you take it a step back, it means that you have to choose creators who aren't green, like you have to choose creators and influencers who really like take a
Yeah.
break and run with it as opposed to needing like a ton of hand holding. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think we have to be quite selective.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Following around that trend line, B2B social has a reputation for being safe, boring, some would say, performative even. You got named one of the top 30 rising voices in B2B social. What does actually good B2B social look like versus what most companies are producing right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one too, because realistically, like in the last, I don't know, let's say 2 years, B2B social is incredible. Like I think B2B social is starting to lead the pack a bit. And the reality that I think most people, I mean, I don't know, I was going to say understand, maybe they don't understand, is like B2B companies have big budgets, right? Like a lot of CPG brands don't
Mm,
have big budgets. Um, so you can produce some pretty like cinematic, incredible campaigns at a B2B company. Um, and I would say probably what B2B companies have gotten wrong, historically speaking, is this, we kind of chatted about this before, but like trying too hard to push the product and make it like a kind of sales pitch or like a sales
mm,
video when really it's like, people don't want that. They want you to kind of like build a world and invite you into that world. So
yeah, yeah,
I think you have to have like to make good B2B content, you have to have some really skilled storytellers in your company or either an agency that you're working with, and you have to trust them. So it's like you probably have to have somebody at your company at a very high level who's going to advocate for the fact that the content that comes out of this campaign probably won't mention our product or like won't show it in action. And the truth is like more junior roles probably just don't have the autonomy to say, guys, like, give me your faith, give me your budget. This is gonna get us. This is gonna take us places.
yeah.
So I think that like realistically, what if I had to distill it down? I think what B2B companies get wrong is they rarely have high level content people. They treat content jobs as like entry level generalists and they don't think to have like a VP of
S-
content, or like
So good.
a content, somebody at like maybe not C-suite. I mean, I support it, but like, somebody who's at the upper echelons of the company advocating for content.
I'm curious, do your kids ask you about your follower account?
I mean, my 4-year-old does not understand
Oh, God, there you go.
social media.
My 10-year My
Yeah.
kids are obsessed. Like they're 10-year
Oh, really?
daddy. How many? Yeah. So my son's 10, my daughter's 8.
Okay.
Literally every time I pick them up from school, Daddy, how many subscribers you have? Did you beat Mr. Beast yet? Oh, dude, I don't think you understand the type of content I create.
Sorry.
It
You
doesn't get a lot of engagement.
Me and Mr. Beast aren't quite equals. No, so then I have another daughter who's 9, and I think she's very impressed by
Really?
me being on the internet. No. I get the
You
sense
did a great job, mommy.
I'm
Because my kids are obsessed.
kind of embarrassing. So so far I have not won any respect from my kids.
Okay, so these are just bragging rights at the barbecue, huh? That you're
Mhm,
you're scoring with your TikTok.
mhm.
um, Founder-led content is having a moment, as I'm sure you've noticed. Every startup is being told their CEO needs to post now. They're writing ghostwriters to go ahead and actually give CEOs some personality that actually don't have any bandwidth other than a teaspoon worth of personality. You've seen behind the curtain. You've seen behind the curtain, the matrix of this, so to speak. When does it work? And when is just when is when is just an expensive cringe that we're just trying to show off?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm not the first one to say this. Um, I think that like CEO founder content doesn't work when the founder has no interest in it. Like when they have completely outsourced it. People can tell. I mean, I think everyone's pretty tired of AI generated content at this point,
Oh,
especially from founders. Like nothing worse than a founder trying to impart their wisdom that came from ChatGPT. So I think like that is when it fails. And I think like because the power dynamic is never going to work. Like say you work in content and
yeah,
it's your job to make the CEO post. They're not afraid of you. So like no amount of you
yeah,
being like, hey, you got to get this post out is going to get them to be active. I think they have to really see the value in it. And there's tons of founders now that do see the value in it. And I think that's like really I don't know. It's interesting to watch founders who are really engaged. I mean, I guess we're also kind of seeing a bit of like bloating of the term founder. Like anyone can call himself a founder, right? Like it doesn't. The word has kind of lost a bit of its meaning, um, but yeah, I mean, I've worked with both. In previous companies, I've worked in places where like founders really didn't want to be featured in content, which like I can respect. Not everyone wants to be like in a public sphere. Um, and then like, currently my boss is very active on LinkedIn and he like prioritizes it. So I think just ultimately like you can't force it. And it's like it's great to make a sales pitch to your founder to be like, hey, you need to be present online.
yeah.
But if consistently they won't do it, like I just don't think there's any amount of like hand holding or um I don't know, kind of like pushing them into it that's going to yield good results.
Yeah. I guess it goes to the very center of content creation, right? And if you don't have a passion for it, doesn't give you energy, sooner or later it's going to be visible. And people are not dumb. Folks are pretty smart. They might see it, you're ghostwriting it, but now that you have to reply to comments and they're not as quirky and somebody meets you in person and it turns out that, damn dude, are you sure you're the one writing those posts? Because
Yeah.
goddamn,
Yeah.
it just starts to fall apart, the mirage, so to speak, that people have built out. So I think it's a slippery slope, and I think folks have to be careful a bit not to just pry up a person and just setting them up for failure, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think also what you're saying is like, founder content isn't just posts, it's also engaging, right? Like it's like you need
There
to
you
be
go.
like in this sort of like cyclical motion where like you're pushing
Yeah.
content out, but then you're also commenting on other people's content and you're
Mm,
consuming
mm.
and you're like kind of priming your algorithm for the sort
Yes.
of people that you want to be in the same circle as. So yeah, like it's not just it's not just a production engine, it has to also
Sure.
be like engagement workflow. And that's probably when when founder content kind of falls flat is when it's like just there's only the content coming out and there's absolutely zero engagement and like zero sort of like spiritual investment in it.
Yeah, yeah. You talk about attentions as currency. Most people nod along to that phrase without really understanding what it actually means commercially. Could you break it down for me? What does it actually cost a brand when they lose attention, and where does that cost usually show up?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about. I feel like I tend to think of, attention as finite, and maybe that's like not how everyone thinks of it, but like, you only have so many hours in a day, and your attention is basically being spent over a period of time. So I don't know. I guess like the risk financially, if you lose the attention game, is that like you're just not a part of people's media diet. And like when you're no longer a part of people's media diet, then they're not thinking of you when it comes time to make a purchase or like a big purchase or a big decision. And especially like in the industry I work in, like in B2B SaaS, people might make these sorts of purchases once a year, once every 2 years, right? So it's like it's a long consideration cycle. It can take a lot, like rounds of approval to get a
Sure.
type of software, put through to the highest level and finally like approved by finance or something. So I think that, if you're losing the attention game, you're just not there when somebody's ready to make that big purchase. And alternatively, to stay on top of the attention game, it's a marathon. You don't win someone's attention or, thereby their currency, by sort of like grabbing their attention once in a while. Like you have to do it all of the time, and you kind of have to be like, I mean, I suppose that's where the consistency really like falls in. I've built like an inconsistent personal brand, but at work, I'm very consistent because, you have to stay top of mind for people. So I don't know. I guess it's just sort of like an opportunity cost that you have to think about, right? Like um, if
Hmm.
if the sales cycles are long or the consideration cycles are long, it's easy to miss out on one of those opportunities, when you're
Hmm.
not top of mind.
Yeah. Interesting. Is there a version of social media that's actually good for people, or you feel like that ship has sailed?
I think the hard truth that a lot of people don't want to accept is that, you know, it's not good to be somebody who's addicted to their phone and has like a 10-hour screen time or something like that, daily screen time. Also, I don't think good to be somebody who totally like walks away from social media, because I do think there's a certain kind of like cultural knowledge that is shared and passed around on social
Sure.
that has value. And you could fight me on that, but um so I think that, wait, I'm losing my train of thought. What was your question? It was,
No, you're good. Is there a version of social media that's
oh,
actually good for
right.
people?
Yeah. And so it's like, I think, yeah, the thing that people don't like hearing is that, like, you have to, social media is good in moderation. It's like there's lots of, okay, it's like you can get humor, you can get comedy, you can get entertainment, you can learn things, you can be
Yeah.
inspired. All of these happen on social media, but it's like they don't happen at the extremes. They don't happen after 10 hours of social media. They probably happen after 20 minutes of social media. So the tricky thing is that you have to exercise some kind of, like, you have to put up boundaries or guardrails to only
Hmm.
use moderation. And we all know how hard that is. It's like next to impossible. And it's not, and not to say that
Yeah.
the onus is on you, um, or that it should be on you, but maybe the better thing to say here is that unfortunately it's on you, because I
Mm.
don't think the platforms are going to take it into their own hands to make their platforms a little less addictive, or like
Yeah.
a little bit more easy to consume in dosages or something like that. So, uh, yeah, I think unfortunately the responsibility for how to use it like sustainably falls on the user as opposed to the company, which is not the way we should approach that, but it's the reality. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess you have to be somewhere in the middle, right? Like, it's interesting that somebody I was talking to who said, this is just the way things are. You can either take advantage of it or let it drag you to hell. You
Mhm.
get to choose and try to figure out what exactly is the option you want to go with.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like I feel like a lot of people, smart people, are talking about these like social media bans, right? And saying,
Sure.
it's not that a social media ban at its heart is a bad thing, but what it does is it's like passing the responsibility to local governments as opposed to the company,
Yes.
and it's like,
Yes.
well,
Yes.
by doing that, like it lets these big companies kind of off the hook, and so they're okay with it. They're okay with supporting like a teenage band because they're like, phew, we don't have to do anything different to the product. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that we need to be critical about like, should it be on the local government? Like they don't know shit all about technology. So
Oh my
it's
God. I don't know if you've seen Senate hearings or like in front of the Congress. Like, how do you earn money, Mr. Zuckerberg? Senator, we run ads like they don't have any idea, an inkling of what exactly are these platforms, what's behind the technology. I have no idea.
totally. So it's like, we probably don't want a body of professionals who really don't understand the technology to then be
Yeah,
regulating it. We need the people who understand the technology inside and out to be regulating it, but that's not going to happen. That's not how
that's not.
that machines work.
Uh,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, anyways, some thoughts on who bears the responsibility.
no, 100%. Before we head into our rapid fire round, you study signals that hint at what's coming next on platforms before most of the folks tend to notice. What are you seeing right now that most social media managers are completely missing?
Signals. I mean, definitely I've been trying to dial into like what kind of a summer will it be. And so I would say I think we're seeing kind of early signs that people are very like, mm, not not so much that I think analog is coming, but it's like pretty like anti-tech. Like I think we're seeing like
Oh,
pretty
yes.
pretty negative sentiment towards AI and tech. Um, so like that's definitely like a signal to pay attention to, and companies will have to think like intelligently about how to respond to that. Um, but I think there's also a bit more like nihilism going on where people are sort of like like I've seen like people talking about smoking more and like kind of like I don't know, being a little bit more like let's live in the moment because the future feels very precarious. So I think that that's another kind of signal that's coming in loud and clear. Like future economic trajectories feel so uncertain that people are like being a little more reckless in the present because they have no faith that
Yeah.
the future is like holding out for them. Um, and I mean, these are broader like cultural themes that I think like get picked up in social media. They're not necessarily social media themes. Uh, and I mean, I'd say one other like more specific signal that I picked up on that I thought was really interesting is Harper's published this story about how like all of the recent books that have done really well are kind of like rage bait books. Um, and they were saying like they didn't quite say this in the article, but I feel like it's what's insinuated is like, oh, the tactics that work well on social are now impacting like life and culture off the feed. So I thought that that was a little bit dismal.
Mm. It's so interesting you mentioned the economic point, and I get it with AI taking over jobs and economic scenario, and it's a nightmare right now. And I think back in the day, right, I guess the conventional wisdom is true. If you tie people down economically, they tend to do less dumb shit. But like you said, if there's no hope for the future,
Holy,
might as well just go nuts.
totally.
What is there?
It's like a rebellion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just interesting enough what exactly the future holds. But good to see these trends are there. Maybe there's some markers that everybody could pick up on. Last question. You study how platforms shape human behavior for a living. After everything you've seen, are you optimistic or pessimistic about what the internet is doing to us, despite the fact that there's some nihilism right now for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it would be dumb of me to say that it's purely an optimistic outlook. I think there's so many demographics that stand to uh not to benefit from the way things are going. So I think that like probably collectively I don't feel optimistic, and yet I will say like I see quite resilient behavior from Gen Alpha. And like
Gen Alpha, are we there yet? This
we're
is where
there.
we are?
We're there. Yeah. Just like kind of like a willingness to respond to all sorts of new technology. And
Mm.
there's also like quite a few Gen Z journalists that I follow, and I'm like, wow, like people do impress me with the way that they're thinking about the future as well. So I don't know. I mean, my answer, I'm going to give you a cop out answer, is both. I think that like um, a lot of the population stands to suffer in the future, but I do think that there is like it's almost like I think the kids that are being born into this era are becoming like very savvy and very resilient, and so I have like a lot of hope for Gen Alpha. I have less hope for Gen Z and millennials. And
What a charming thought.
sorry to lay that down.
No, all good. It's not like I'm gonna sleep after this.
Yeah.
All right. So rapid fire round. Quick questions, quick answers.
Okay.
Best advice you've ever received, business or personal?
Oh my gosh. Um, my sister once said, like, if you're going to a big event and you feel really nervous, sometimes you just start by saying, "Hey, I'm feeling really nervous." Just like calling it out how you feel instead of trying to hide it. I thought that was pretty good.
I've heard that one before. I think it was, I don't know who said it. I had a buddy burned to a party. He had a hole in his pants. I'm like, hey, everyone, I got a hole in my pants.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
just get the elephant out of the room. Like,
Yeah, totally.
just
Totally.
you don't have to sit
Right.
nervous. On the flip side, advice you ignored or wish you had listened to.
Oh my God. Like bad advice, I guess we're saying.
I guess so. I mean, whatever you want to say, you just push it out there. We're gonna make viral content out of this one.
Oh my God. This is a lot of pressure. I don't know. I feel like there's maybe some advice where it's like you have to kind of like try things before you know they're not for you. I think sometimes you could just make executive decisions and be like, no, I'm not going to make this mistake, or I'm not going to waste 2 years of my life like in a job that I know isn't for me or something like that. So I think it's okay to just be like uh decisive without like having tacit knowledge.
See, folks, even influencers can struggle at times. Um, what would you tell your younger self, say 7 to 10 years ago?
I think I would say to like become visible in a working sphere earlier. You know, I was pretty late to be somebody who shared the work I do online, and like only good things have come of it. So I wouldn't waste time on that.
Awesome. Is there an ongoing challenge in your current work that keeps you up at night?
Oh my God. I sleep like shit. I wake up every night at 3 a.m. and think about work. Um
Why?
I don't
Ambien is always.
yeah, I know. There's drugs for that. Yeah. Well,
For that exactly.
I mean, I say like no one thing keeps me up, but I'm just the type of person who uh like runs things through in my head so many times before they actually happen, and so I kind of make myself sick, but that's a me problem. I wouldn't say that's a work problem.
Eh. Hey, we're not all perfect, right? We can have a million followers, but what the hell?
Hmm.
Your favorite restaurant meal or spot?
My favorite restaurant meal. Hmm. Oh my gosh. I would say there's this restaurant in Toronto called Haifa Room, and everything I've had there has been so good. So,
What kind of food do they have?
oh, it's like I don't want to sound like a moron. I don't know. It's sort of like Mediterranean. There was like falafel and pita and lots of dips. Um, but I'm not sure specifically beyond that. It was like everything they have is
Mediterranean.
yes,
We'll
like
just go with that one.
Mediterranean vibes. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. One tool that you swear by and cannot live without.
Like SAS tool?
Sure, it can be SaaS. It can be any tool you like.
I mean, IRL tools, knitting needles. SAS tool, I would say
IRL, God.
I think I'm probably like a Notion gal through and through. So I use Notion every single day and organize everything in it. Yeah.
That's awesome. One last thing is, I don't know if you like the movie Gladiator, but in Gladiator, Marx, the general Maximus is what you do in your life echoes in eternity. Is there a message you want your kids to take away from everything if there's a reel playing back for your professional life?
I've kept like a pretty low ego, like I've taken like big title cuts and I've like started over again, and um I think that I would sort of encourage them not to think so much about status. Like I don't think it's personally worth it to pursue high status roles. Like I think it's better to think about the kind of work that you find meaningful and that you want to do.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know if that's like a low status thing or a low ego thing, but I feel like my trajectory has been pretty both of them, low ego, low status. Yeah.
Just smoke the CEO with having more followers than that person. I got you. Carmen, this has been fantastic. Where can listeners find you?
Okay, so on TikTok and Instagram, I'm at Carm Scrolls. And on Substack, I write a newsletter called Scroll Sick. And then on LinkedIn, I'm just myself, Carmen Vicente.
That's awesome. Very meta, Carm Scrolls. Any upcoming project, launch, talk, or event that you're excited about?
That's a good question. I mean, we've got an event next week in Toronto where I'm leading like a panel discussion. Got a happy hour on the 23rd at Brain Station. It's like a slate happy hour, but it's that's probably the next thing on my agenda.
I want to see some TikTok reels come out of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Carmen, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and giving me your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun to chat. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Folks, if you got value out of this shit with someone needs to, I'll see you next week. Thank you.